Information discussed in this podcast may be sensitive in nature to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Sara Ebersole always had an adventurous spirit, even as a young child. She was super friendly with everyone, and she would grow up in Sarasota, Florida, being raised by her aunt and uncle. For whatever reason, her biological parents were not in her life. She would keep a close relationship with her sister, Michelle, who was 14 years older than her. At age 18, Sara would marry. That marriage, however, only lasted a year. Sara would have another relationship soon after, and while that relationship turned out to be quite tumultuous, they would have a daughter together. Both of these men played an interesting role in Sara's life. In March of 2023, Sara was living with a roommate in Reddick, Florida, and she was working as an exotic dancer. Her daughter at the time was living with Sara's ex and the little girl's father. Sara was working towards getting legal custody, and that takes money, something she was really working hard to obtain. On March 2nd, 2023, Sara went to work as usual. She was actually off work that evening by 7 p.m., and she would walk to a local gas station near her home. While there, she was texting with her sister. Just before 8 o'clock p.m., she sent a text to Michelle that read, quote, "I'm getting into a random truck with cowboys. I hope they take me for a ride." End quote. This would be Michelle's last communication with Sara. Sara was taken to a house where she would hang out with 3 people who lived there until around 3 o'clock in the morning. The residents of the house said that she got into an Uber at that time and left. From there, Sara was never seen or heard from again, and clues would surface that would actually point to a couple of different possibilities as to her whereabouts. Her family believes they know what happened, but for some reason, authorities refuse to investigate that route. Instead, they have taken another direction with their investigation. Who's right? Most importantly, where is Sara Gail Ebersole? Hello, and welcome back to the Where Are They podcast and another Unsolved Missing Persons episode. This story takes us back to March 2023 and to Reddick, Florida, a small town in the central part of the state. This case does remind me a bit of the story of Benny Battle, a man who went missing from Dixie County, Florida. The similarities? Well, in Benny's story and in Sara's story, law enforcement and the family have been on 2 very different journeys. In fact, it seems law enforcement isn't that interested in solving either case for some reason. We'll dive into that more shortly. First, a big welcome to our newest Patreon member, Trisha. Trisha works in search and rescue in the Pacific Northwest, and I want to thank her for her dedication to helping families find loved ones and for joining our community over on Patreon. She works with a trained canine named Samson, and of course, we thank Samson as well for his work and his service. Let's get right into the story of Sara Ebersole. Sara's story is heartbreaking because she has a family desperately searching for her, and they're basically left on their own to do just that. Help from law enforcement has been minimal at best, maybe even less than that. Sara Gail Ebersole was born and raised in the Sarasota, Florida area. She was raised by an aunt and uncle, and her parents were not involved in her life. There are no public details as to why that was. Sara was the youngest of 7 children, and she maintained a very close relationship with her sister Michelle, even though Michelle was 14 years older than her. Free-spirited Sara was the social butterfly of the family. She was an adventurous child and carried that over to her adult life. At age 18, she married Thomas Ebersole. That marriage would not last, and a year later, they would be divorced. I will talk more about Thomas later and the shocking things that he would go on to do after their divorce. Actions that did not have anything to do with Sara, but Thomas would actually make the news for a terrible crime later on. After Thomas, Sara would begin dating a man by the name of Joseph Mayton. Joseph worked as a manager for the Motel Ocala Suites, and he and Sara's relationship quickly developed into a tumultuous one, possibly even an abusive one. Sara became pregnant, and during that pregnancy, Sara and Joseph would split up. At one point, Sara even had to obtain a restraining order against him, saying that he was stalking her and harassing her. Sara even changed her phone number. What would happen in the months or years after is a bit of a mystery. Sara would move in with a roommate in Reddick, Florida, and Joseph would maintain custody of their daughter. Sara was hoping to obtain legal custody soon and was allegedly saving money to pursue just that. During this time, Sara was working at a gentleman's club as an exotic dancer. Now, many missing stories are dismissed by the public due to the circumstances of someone's life. I see this a lot with drug addicts who vanish. No one wants to search for them or take their case seriously because of their addiction. I also see this with prostitutes, and Sara's case has received some negative attention because of her work at a gentleman's club. But regardless of your opinion of what she did for work, there is a little girl out there that deserves to know her mother, to have her mother here for her. There is an older sister who desperately wants to know where her little sister is. There is extended family, and there are many friends of Sara's, all wanting answers. The disappearance. Sara went to work on March 2nd, 2023, as she usually did. She was off work just after 7 o'clock p.m., and she texted her sister Michelle to see if maybe Michelle could give her a ride home. Michelle was unable to go get her, but told Sara to text her in a bit. Sara said, okay, no problem. She also told Michelle to tell the kids that she said hi. Sara did make it home that evening and later decided to walk over to a nearby gas station. At 10:11 p.m., Sara texted Michelle and said, quote, I'm getting into a random truck with cowboys. I hope they take me for a ride. End quote. The next day, Michelle was unable to reach Sara. She wasn't responding to text messages, and she wasn't picking up the phone either. The day after that, Sara's roommate came home from being out of town. She texted Michelle asking if she knew where Sara was. Michelle said she did not, and she hadn't been able to reach her either. Together, the two of them became very concerned. After checking around town and with friends that Sara was known to hang out with, they realized that Sara was missing. No one had seen or heard from her since the night of March 2nd, when she had sent Michelle that text about getting into that truck. The roommate was the one who would go to local police to try to file a missing persons report, but they told her to come back in about a week. Michelle and Sara's roommate realized if they were going to go search for Sara and find her, they were on their own. The search and investigation. The first question they needed answered was, whose truck did she get into the night of March 2nd at the gas station? Surveillance video from the gas station did show 2 people in a pickup truck and Sara willingly getting in. One person in the truck would be identified as James Robinson. When James was questioned, he said that he and Sara hung out at the house with 2 other people who lived in the other half of the house. The 4 of them would hang out until about 3 o'clock a.m. when they believed that Sara left in an Uber. They described the car as being blue or dark blue in color, and the man driving as being possibly Hispanic with dark hair. but they didn't really see anything else beyond that. They said she left, getting into the car with everything seeming normal to them. Sara did have an Uber account, and that Uber account was checked. There was no record of her ordering an Uber that night or that morning. However, she did have some Uber drivers' contact information in her phone. Could she have contacted someone directly? Speaking of Sara's phone, this was also missing right along with Sara, so obtaining the records would be tough. Sara's phone service was also shut off on March 6th. Did someone have it shut off, or did she simply need to pay her bill? Michelle said that Sara did use a prepaid service and believed that she was just likely overdue on paying for her next month. During all of this investigation, authorities were still not taking Sara's case seriously, which was exceptionally frustrating for Michelle. She worked social media hard. She even organized and went out on searches herself. The home that Sara was last known to be at was being sold, and it was learned that those living there had actually been squatting. Michelle pushed law enforcement to search that property, but they refused. Michelle took matters into her own hands and contacted Marion County Search and Rescue. They obtained permission from the property owner to search, and they brought out specially trained canines. Unfortunately, they didn't find any signs of Sara. Marion County Sheriff was also not happy that Michelle and her family were searching and looking for Sara on their own. They asked them to stop and told them to let them do their job. But every lead or suggestion from family that was brought up to them, they declined to follow up on. Sara's family also asked them to search Sara's apartment to see if that might lend any clues to the investigation. They did not, but her family decided to search. Sara allegedly had $1,000 cash she was saving. That money was unaccounted for. Michelle also noticed 3 other items that were missing from Sara's room. Number 1, a binder with documents that Sara had put together regarding Joseph Mayton. These documents were to help with her custody battle, information specifically about Joseph. Number 2, a teddy bear from when her daughter was born with her daughter's name on it. And number 3, a folder of important paperwork pertaining to her daughter. Sara's family knew for sure where these items should have been, yet they were all missing. Immediately, Michelle's focus went from the people that were at that house with Sara that night to Joseph Mayton. While he proclaimed to have no knowledge of Sara's whereabouts, there were some interesting things learned by Sara's family and investigators in the weeks and months following Sara's disappearance. On March 24th, 3 weeks after Sara vanished, Joseph started following Facebook pages pertaining to Sara's disappearance. On March 29th, a friend came forward to say that Joseph had told them that Sara was dead. Also on March 29th, Joseph was arrested for assault on a 75-year-old man. On April 10th, Joseph was fired from his job at Ocala Suites. On April 24th, Joseph breaks into the office at the motel and he would rekey rooms 119 and 121. An official eviction would ultimately have to be filed against Joseph to get him out of those 2 rooms. When that did happen, Michelle asked authorities to search those rooms, but again, they refused. Michelle went in there herself and looking around noted that room 119 looked as if it could have been a crime scene, complete with what she thought might have been blood and handprints on the walls. Joseph Mayton, along with his and Sara's little girl, left the state of Florida and moved to Kentucky. Sara's phone records were also finally able to be analyzed, and they learned some more interesting things. First, they noticed that she took pictures which were saved to the cloud at 1:22 a.m. from the home in Reddick that she was at that night, the night she disappeared. She watched YouTube videos until 2:40 a.m., and then she accessed her Gmail at 2:57 a.m. On March 3rd, later on in the day, her Snapchat was opened, but whoever opened it couldn't access it, and they tried to reset the password. They were unsuccessful. They did also find 3 Uber drivers' phone numbers saved in her phone. Michelle reached out to each one of them. 2 of them spoke to her willingly, and when she showed them a picture of Sara, said that they did not pick her up in those early morning hours. A third driver, a man by the name of Ryan, refused to speak to them. Ryan is Native American with dark hair, possibly fitting the description of the driver who might have picked up Sara that night. Sara's family thinks his behavior is certainly odd, especially if he did indeed have nothing to do with Sara's disappearance. Joseph Mayton has quite a criminal record and has also refused to speak to anyone in Sara's family. Sadly, they have not been able to see the child either, and Joseph has even changed her name from her birth name to a different name completely. In December of 2023, law enforcement surprised everyone with an arrest of a man named Tyrone Mormon. Authorities connected him to Sara. We don't have all the details as to how and why, and they wanted to question him. During their questioning, Tyrone lied to them about his cell phone, trying to avoid turning it over. When it was discovered that he did have his cell phone, he was arrested for lying to the police. In March of 2024, police announced that Tyrone was now a person of interest in Sara's disappearance. While we don't have a lot of the details again regarding why this is, it is believed that there is cell phone evidence putting Tyrone and Sara together after 3 a.m. on March 3rd. Tyrone has denied this. Sara's sister Michelle does not believe that Tyrone Mormon is involved in her sister's disappearance. Let's talk for a minute about Thomas Ebersole, Sara's ex-husband. Their relationship was short-lived, and it isn't believed that they had much contact after their divorce. But his name often comes up in her case, and although he isn't believed to be involved in her disappearance, I think once you hear his circumstances, you will understand why his name comes up. In January of 2024, 10 months after Sara vanished, Thomas Ebersole was arrested, not for anything regarding Sara, but rather for kidnapping a 16-year-old girl from Ohio and hiding her in his basement. When authorities questioned him about why he had done this, he said he was waiting for her to turn 18 so that it would be legal for them to marry. The girl was found and located through her World of Warcraft account, which was being used by an IP address that was located at Thomas's house. The name Thomas Ebersole made the news far and wide with this arrest, and many had to wonder if he could have been involved in Sara's disappearance. It is important to mention that no one close to Sara believes that he was, and there is absolutely no evidence indicating he was involved in any way. To add further complication into this case, the man that took Sara to that home that night to hang out, James Robinson, would go on to pass away from a drug overdose. Obtaining further information from James will not be possible. Reddick, Florida. Reddick is a town in Marion County, Florida. It is considered part of the Ocala Metropolitan Statistical Area. As of the 2020 U.S. Census, the town population was just 449 residents. This is down from 506 residents in 2010. Reddick is about 25 miles south of Gainesville and about 15 miles north of Ocala. Nearby, only 4 miles away, is Orange Lake, a very large recreational lake. The lake itself covers over 12,000 acres. Interesting fact about Reddick, the movie Jeepers Creepers was partly filmed here in the year 2000. Reddick High School was actually used as part of the police station in the movie. There are a few specific points of interest in Sara's case. First, the house that she was last known to be at was located at 18080 North Highway 441. This was very close to the gas station where she was picked up at. Now, nothing was found at that location, but remember that search mostly fell on Sara's family to conduct. Luckily, the new property owners did give permission and were cooperative for that search. But again, nothing was turned up. It's also believed that she was picked up from that house, but no one knew where she was planning on going. And was she picked up by this Tyrone Mormon, who police believe is a person of interest in her case? It does seem they have some type of evidence showing that he was with her after 3 o'clock a.m. when she left the house. Or was she picked up by this mysterious Ryan listed in her phone as an Uber driver? What, if any, connection did Joseph Mayton have to these people? Joseph Mayton has caught the attention of a lot of people in regards to Sara's case. Joseph was working at the Ocala Suites in Ocala, about 19 miles south of the house she was at in Reddick. The suites have exterior doors, making it easy to come and go without being seen, especially in the very early morning hours. Could Sara have went there willingly, or could Sara have been taken there? It doesn't seem that her phone was really searched, which would have been definitely helpful for GPS locations and to determine who she might have been communicating with that evening and morning. Since Joseph Mayton was never seen as a person of interest, it doesn't appear there was any forensic analysis into him either, such as GPS locations and call and text logs from his phone. What do you think happened to Sara Ebersole? There were a few interesting people in her life at that time, people with criminal records, such as Joseph and her ex-husband Thomas. Could either of them have more information on Sara's disappearance? Or was this a random incident? Did she meet with foul play at the hands of a stranger or someone completely off the radar to family and police? Or did Sara walk away from her life? Did it all become just too much to bear? Sara is described as a Caucasian female standing 5'1" tall and weighing around 120 pounds when she was last seen in March of 2023. Sara was 25 years old then and would today be 27. She has brown hair and blue eyes. Anyone with any information on the whereabouts of Sara Ebersole is asked to please contact the Marion County Sheriff's Department at 352-732-9111. Thank you so much for listening to Sara's story. A young woman whose disappearance needs solved. A young mother who needs to be brought home. If you have a case suggestion, please reach out to me via the socials. All of those links can be found in the show notes. Or you can email me anytime at canwefindthem@gmail.com. A big welcome once again to Trish for joining us over on Patreon. Thank you for your support and a huge thank you for your work in the search and rescue field. If you've made it this far and appreciate the work to raise awareness on these cases, please consider leaving us a 5-star review. It helps us a ton, and we can't thank you enough for your dedication to helping us share these stories. We will be back again very soon with another unsolved missing persons case. And until then, stay safe and hug your loved ones.